It's good quality, mashallah. Okay, this is session number 8. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, sallallahu wa sallam ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. This is session number 8 on the Refinement of Character by Ibn Qudama, radiallahu anhu. And so we left off. The next section is a fun one. We have to finish this section though. The next section is on the state of those who socialize with tyrannical rulers. That should be fun. But before we finish that, we're in this topic from last week. If you didn't make it last week, or if you made it last week, in both cases, I suggest you review the video. Those of you who were here will recall that it was a lot. It's a lot of categorization around halal and haram, and when something is halal and when something is haram, and when you have doubts about it, and how to deal with it, and how do you choose which side, and all of those kind of things. There was a lot of details. But I think that, as we noticed at the end, actually, in the question answer, when we start to talk about meat, and the meat that people serve you in their homes and stuff like that, I think we found that the principles applied in interesting ways. So it was, I think it was useful and fun in the end. Maybe fun is not the right word for most people, but for me, I thought it was fun. But that brings us to the third category. Okay, Bismillah, قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى ونفعنا الله وإياكم بعلمه في الدارين آمين. The third category, when one should look into the lawfulness of something and inquire about it. Okay, so let's see what he says. Know that if food is brought to you, or someone gives you a gift, or you want to buy something for someone, you are not allowed to say, I am not sure about its lawfulness and need to investigate the matter. Okay. That said, you are not allowed to completely refrain from looking into the matter either. Rather, it is sometimes essential that you question, and sometimes it is obligatory, and sometimes it is prohibited, and sometimes it is recommended, and sometimes it is disapproved of. So, the issue now is you're going to buy something, you're getting a gift of something, you don't know what the rule on it is, you don't know if it's halal or not. And he's saying you're not allowed to just simply not investigate it, and you're also not allowed to just investigate it. But there's different cases where a different conclusion would come out. Some of them will be this way, some of them will be that way, and so it's sometimes people want things very clear, you know? And they get frustrated. It's okay. Very few things in life are extremely clear. A satisfactory explanation of this is as follows. What entitles one to ask is doubt, and doubt occurs due to something in the wealth or the owner of the wealth. So now he's drawing a chart again. You draw that. It's assumed that you're drawing the chart in your head. Remember last week we talked about charts and whether you use a chart, whether you don't use a chart, all that kind of stuff, but it's assumed that you're already drawing the chart in your head. So you have the issue on the top. Ask or don't ask, sometimes yes, sometimes no. Then he says, what is it that's going, you have like a little thing, doubt comes. And this doubt is going to be related to something in the wealth, or it's going to be related to the owner of the wealth. So it's the thing itself, or it's the person who you're getting it from. For example, if the owner is unknown due to not bearing any signs of a wrongdoer, I'm reading it, okay? If the owner is unknown due to not bearing any signs of a wrongdoer, like military clothing, or of a pious man, like the garments of the scholars and ascetics, one is not obliged to question him anything. Okay, that's clear. All right, so basically, details aside of obviously the details that he gives to bring an image for the concept is going to be related to his environment, right? But what is the main point? The main point is this person comes to you, they're the owner of the wealth, and they don't have any sign that would give you an indication as to are they pious or are they a wrongdoer? Okay? There's no sign. In this case, one is not obliged to question him anything. In fact, questioning him is not permissible, as that entails degradation and harming of another Muslim. Wealth like this is not called questionable, for a thing is only defined as questionable when doubt concerning it occurs due to evidence. This came up last time too, right? So you don't have any evidence to have doubt. So the default is that the Muslim is not questioned in that way. The Muslim is, and this is an important principle, because you will find people who develop a psychology in their own religiosity that leads to always doubting other Muslims. This is a false psychology, spiritual psychology. The default of another Muslim is not that you doubt them. If you don't have any sign, you don't have any signs that telling you anything. It's just a Muslim. You don't doubt them for some reason. You know, if someone is sitting and they're making salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they're talking about how much they love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you don't assume that they have an aqidah problem. That's You don't have any business making that assumption. The assumption is it's a wrong assumption in the first place. There's no sign that this person has any issues. Okay? In fact, questioning him is not permissible, as that entails degradation and harming of another Muslim. Wealth like this is not questionable, for a thing is only defined as questionable when doubt concerning it occurs due to evidence. Such evidence could be the man looking like a Turk. Is he being against the Turks? No, right? Again, you have to understand what's happening, right? It has to do with like soldiers in his time and who are the soldiers and what do they look like. And then this becomes like a sign that maybe that person is doing, whatever. It's not because he's against the Turks. Or one of the Bedouins known for their oppression, or a highway robber. Even then, it is permissible to deal with him because the fact that he has the property indicates that he owns it, and the aforementioned signs are not strong evidence. So even still, if it's just like a small doubt that the person has, it's not sufficient to make you go into a higher level. If you want the good fans is this one. Maybe someone can turn it on. Mike can turn it on. Yeah. Can you hit the fan, Mike? You know the one on the pole right there, where the cord is? There's a little, yeah. This is the, mashallah. Maybe not too high though, not too high. Don't want our comfortable go away. MashaAllah. All right, so what he's getting at here is to understand that there's evidence that's strong enough that it warrants looking at. And then there's things that are like your evidence for the doubt is doubtful. Like what you're using as an indicator, it's not really an indicator. Like what I was talking about last week, that sometimes I feel shy to wear my ring. Was that last week here? I think it was here. I feel shy to wear my ring because some people look at it and like as soon as you have, I think it was maybe in the evening. Some people look at like if you have a pinky ring and it has a stone in it, then you belong to this team. That's a very weak evidence, very weak evidence, because someone could wear a ring for any reason. Of course, the most assumable reason, if you see a Muslim man wearing a pinky ring, the most assumable reason is that the Prophet ﷺ wore a pinky ring. It's that simple. You don't assume anything else from it. Should be that simple. With khilaf on whether he wore it on his right hand or his left hand. Anyways. Usually, by the way, he used to wear it like this. So wear it with the stone side in to the inside of his palm. So we want on the other side. Wear like that. You see it now, you know. And the stone, I wear this stone, different reason. Not sunnah reason, not direct sunnah reason, indirect sunnah reason. This stone comes from land that's close to where my mother is from. That's why I wear this ring. People are like, is it a mood ring? I'm like, no. Is it turning black? No, that's not it. It is from the, it's a little bit old though, and kind of like not clear anymore, but it's in stone. All right. It's not strong evidence, point. However, it is praiseworthy prudence to abstain dealing with them. So, you know, you're dealing with someone, they have the wealth, you don't really have a clear reason to doubt them, but you have a really unclear reason. You could stay away from it just out of caution, but you don't have to, right? With respect to doubt regarding the capital itself, it could happen, for example, that lawful things get intermixed with unlawful ones. If stolen food arrives at the marketplace and the merchants buy it, the buyers of that marketplace in that town are not obliged to ask about the food they purchase. Asking becomes necessary only when it is likely that most of what they offer is unlawful. But if this is not the case, it would be prudent to investigate, but not necessary, meaning not required. Okay, prudent, but not required. By the way, for people coming in, there's more chairs in the back. Please feel free to grab chairs, make yourself at home. So what's this other scenario? You have people in the marketplace, they're selling something. That product comes to the marketplace stolen. Some of the sellers in the marketplace buy that, and now they're selling it in the marketplace. And you know that some of it is stolen, but not all of it is stolen. Most of it is not. In this case, one is not required. These are actually reviewed from last week. One is not required to look into it. The same is said about a man who has lawful and unlawful money. He might be, for example, a merchant whose business is generally valid, but he deals with usury. Usury is a better translation, by the way, than interest. Because not all interest is riba. But in our Muslim lexicon, we use it this way, but it's just, you know, side point. Riba has its own definition. So usury, if majority of their money, if his money is unlawful, it is not permissible to answer his invitation or gifts before investigating into the matter. If one then finds out that what is being offered came from a lawful source, he is allowed to accept it, and if not, he must refrain. If the unlawful money is less, what is being offered is regarded as doubtful, and a prudent person avoids it. Okay, so this kind of came up last time too, and basically the point is you're dealing with someone, and you have reason to believe that the vast majority of their wealth is haram. In this case, you assume that their wealth is haram. If the vast majority of their wealth is lawful, and a small portion is lawful, I'm sorry, I'm messing this up. If the vast majority of their wealth is lawful, and a small portion is unlawful, then it's fair to assume that what you're getting is lawful. But you could investigate if you wanted to be really particular about it. In our time, this is a little bit harder in some ways. And maybe you could say a little bit easier in some ways. I don't know how to look at it actually exactly, but but the thing is that, you know, like say for example, you had gold, right, in the past. You would actually have a physical gold coin that represented that value, right? That was that value. Or you have some sort of physical product, some sort of item that had value. But now it's like whatever your wealth is, it goes into the account. Nothing's ever seen. It's just like some numbers transferring one thing to another thing, and then another thing to another thing. And it's not really like, it's a little bit more vague in a sense. You can't look at it and be like, well, those are the gold coins that he got from that transaction that was haram. And these are the gold coins that he got from that transaction that was halal. It's hard to make that distinction today. It's all mixed together. But anyways, last time we talked about it too. Know that one only asks due to suspicion. So questioning does not end until the reason to doubt is no longer there. This means that one being asked should not be a suspicious person. If he is suspicious and you know that he has an ulterior motive in inviting you or giving you a gift, you must not trust his words. Instead, you should ask someone else. So basically the point is, if you have some doubt and the person that you have doubt of is the reason for the doubt, then you don't really ask them because you can't trust their answer. You have to ask someone else. This does, have some relevance to the modern meat dilemma. Right? Maybe you go to a restaurant and you ask them if their meat is halal, and you have good reason to believe that they're not giving you a true answer. That's why a lot of places that are serious about whether or not their meat is halal, they post something that shows that, like, here's the certificate that says we get our meat from such and such place, and then has like a date on it. Or if they're really serious about it, they'll have like a halal certification. It says there's this halal board, they've certified that they check our things, and we're good to go, you know. Some people, you don't trust them in the first place because, like we talked about last time, they give you the answer based on what they think is halal, not based on what you're asking. So they know that you're coming to them and asking them, is this halal? And you mean, like, does it have a halal stamp on it? Did you get it from a particular distributor? All that stuff. They know that you're asking that. But to them, all of the meat in America is halal. So even though they know that you're asking what you're asking, they tell you, yes, it's halal, because to them it's halal. This is obviously, then you can't trust this person. You need third-party authentication in order to determine whether or not it's halal. Anyways, it's just an example to bring home this point. The fourth category, how the repentant compensates for financial iniquity. Fourth category, how the repentant compensates for financial iniquity. Know that anyone who repents while in possession of wealth of which a portion is known to have been unlawfully obtained, he is obliged to segregate and extract what is unlawful from the lawful. If the amount is known, then the matter is easy. But if he cannot distinguish it from the rest, he should look. If the unlawful and the lawful are the same sort, such as when everything is crops, money, or oils, and the amount is known, he takes away that amount. If the matter proves difficult, he has two options. So, first of all, if you know what the haram piece is, it's clear, you just get rid of it. If you have one kind of wealth, and some of it is haram and some of it is not, then you take the amount that is haram, you distinguish it, and you give that away. If the matter proves difficult, after that, he has two options. One is to take out what he thinks is most likely correct, and the other is to take out enough to leave no room for doubt. No, this is two separate positions. Do you catch it? And one of them is to take out basically the minimum. The other one is to take out kind of like the maximum. I'm sure now. Like, let's say, for example, let's just say they have wheat. Okay? You have a big thing of wheat. And you know that, like, let's say a fifth of that wheat was haram. So the minimum would be to just take out the 1/5, toss it, right? The other way would be like, well, I put the 1/5 in last, so I'm going to take out like the top half. This way I'm sure that, like, whatever haram was there, it's all gone, and I move on. Okay? After segregating the unlawful property, he must return it to the owner or his heirs if the owner is known. If the property it's known who it was taken from, it has to be returned to the one who it was taken from. If that specific property has increased in amount or benefit, he gathers all of it and gives it to the rightful owner. Maybe it's increased in value, right? Maybe the person stole 5 sheep, and they kept those 5 sheep for 3 years. I don't know how fast sheep reproduce, but let's just say 5 sheep, 3 years passed, now it's like 10 sheep, 15 sheep, I don't know, right? They give all of that to the person, not just the 5. All of that is theirs. And this was the benefit of these transportation methods also, by the way, and food sources. There are food and transportation sources that if you hold on to them long enough, they give you more. Can you imagine if you held on to your cars, put 2 cars in the driveway, hold on to them for 10 years, and afterwards you have 5? It'd be amazing. You have like 10 cars after 5 years, it'd be incredible, you know? Camels were great like that, horses, donkeys. Donkey's a great animal, by the way. People sleep on donkeys. I was really tempted last night to make like a social media post. It's like, I was inspired by the kids, you know. Point of view, when your parents have been calling you a donkey your whole life and you thought they were ridiculing you, but they were actually praising you. And then it would show like the person doing research on the qualities of a donkey. If you do research on the qualities of a donkey, you'd be amazed. They're incredible. They're very intelligent, they're very resilient, they're very communal, they're very steady. Their memory is incredible. They know a path, you know, you teach them the path, they know the path. They're amazing animals. They don't get scared. I've been researching donkeys, if you can't tell. Like loggers that have the horses, they have these special horses they have to that are very strong. They can pull certain things, right? But they don't have stamina. So they use those horses to pull it like a little bit, but the horses get scared, but the donkey doesn't get scared. So they train it by putting the donkey with the horse because they're cousins, right? And then they cut down the trees next to the donkey and the horse. The donkey doesn't even flinch. Like the tree falls right in front of it, it's just like the horse is getting all worried, but then the donkey's next to it, so it calms down. So then the horse gets trained to not get scared by the tree. It's incredible, actually. SubhanAllah, like, the world is filled with so many interesting types of knowledge. All right, donkeys. Don't sleep on donkeys. Okay. If he has no hope of finding the owner and does not know whether he has died or not, and whether he has left any heirs, he should give the property in charity. If the money was taken from the spoils of Fay, it's like when you conquer a land, and the money put aside to benefit the Muslims, he should spend it on the construction of bridges and masjids and development of the road of Mecca in any way that benefits the Muslim travelers. So basically, if the money was taken from a source that if the money was taken from a source that would be normally used for the benefit of the Muslims, then they have to take it and use it for something in the benefit of the Muslims. Okay, so that would be here. All right, here's an issue. If a person has both lawful and doubtful money, he should use the lawful money for himself. He should consider his food and clothing first before things like the covers, feed, oil, and heating the oven. This is because the Prophet ﷺ said about the earnings of a cover, feed your camel with it. Anyways, this is not a really understood issue. If the earnings of one's parents are unlawful, if the earnings of one's parents are unlawful, he should refrain from eating with them. If their money is doubtful, he should advise them gently. If they do not accept his advice, he should only take a little. Again, this is not necessarily like a little bit of their money is unlawful. Talking about all of their money is unlawful, right? Indeed, it has been narrated that the mother of Bishr al-Hafi once gave him a date and he ate it. But after that, he went up to the room and vomited it. Okay. Bishr, take it. If it makes sense to you, take it. If it doesn't make sense to you, don't take it. Move on with your life. Bishr was one of the most righteous people of all time. Many, many famous stories about Bishr. Bishr al-Hafi. You know, al-Hafi means is barefoot. And because he was basically the story of when he repented, it happened when he was barefoot. So after that, for the rest of his life, he went barefoot because he wanted to remember the situation when he, like when that happened. You know, he would remember, this is the moment when I came back to Allah. I want to remember that. So he walked barefoot the rest of his life. Happy. The fifth category, grants and gifts. It segues into the next one. Good. Grants and gifts made by the rulers and sultans, having close ties with them, and the permissible ways of accompanying oppressive rulers. Know that before accepting a gift from the ruler, he must consider how that gift came to be in the possession of the ruler in the first place. One has to find out where the sultan got it from, whether it is of the type that can be taken, and whether he is deserving of the amount offered. Some of the pious used to practice prudence and avoided it, while others accepted it and then gave it away as charity. Alhamdulillah. I mentioned that last time. Right? You guys remember that? I mentioned that last time. I've told you before, but these, like, for people like me, those moments are like the most happy moments in one's life. Understand? Do you remember the story? We were sitting with one of our teachers, very brilliant person, inshallah. Very eclectic, kind of like eclectic personality. Very amazing person. They allowed him to sit and give fatwa after Jummah in Egypt when he was 21. Which is like, it's not very common, you know. You have to, you know, you're in a land of scholars. It's not, that doesn't happen very easily. And you know, some people are just made for it. He's the one I told you stories before that one year we went to the book fair with him. We have to remind him, like, don't, you could take this as a bad thing, but don't, you know, we'd have to remind him about Salah because he gets so taken by the books. The book fair is like a huge deal. Imagine, I don't know, like some huge area, stall after stall after stall of booksellers. And you go into each one, look at all the books, just look at the title, see the ones that are interesting, you look them, pick them, go to the next one, and then like go to the next stall for like 10 hours straight. And this would spend the whole day like this. And then we have to be like, Sheikh, you know, we're gonna miss Asr, we should pray Asr. It's like, okay, we'll pray Asr, and you go back to the stalls, continue. And then we dropped him off, picked him up in the morning, and he was super excited. We were like, what's going on, you know? And he said, last night, I'd never believe what happened. We're like, what? He said, I read the entire last volume of the Fatawa of Imam Shawkani. The Imam Shawkani Fatawa is like probably like this big, you know? So we're like, okay, Sheikh, that's great, you know? He's like, but do you know what the last volume is? And we're like, no. He's like, it's the index. Like, he literally sat down and read 500 pages of table of contents. That was his night, you know? And he's like, so now I know all of the fatwa that are in the 10 volumes before. If any issue comes up, I have it now. I know that it's here. I can find it. This is people are so. One time we were reading something with him, and you know, usually the old books they have like the primary text, the metin, and they have a commentary. So usually the sheikh will read the metin and he'll give his commentary. And then you kind of like look at the commentary, the written commentary afterwards, either on your own or sometimes in class. So he was reading and then he gave the commentary and then he said what he said. And then right afterwards, he looked at the commentary and he read the commentary and it was like word for word what he said. And he got really excited. He's like, "Shuf, aywa," like North African. انظروا إنما الكلام من الكلام. He was really excited. He's like, the kalam, the speech is from the speech. Meaning like, for him as a teacher, that was the happiest moment because he said something from himself, and it matched what the scholars said. To him, that's a sign that like my mind is working in the way that the scholar's mind works. So he's very happy. So when I read something like this, and it's pretty much what we had mentioned last week, then this kind of thing makes strange people like me very happy. Because if what I'm saying doesn't have correspondence, and part of Islamic history, actually, and thought and tradition is correspondence. That there should be many layers and lines of correspondence between the things that are being said. They kind of like back each other up and support each other. That's how you know that you're in the right direction. There'll be slight differences in things, but so this is very happy. As for these times, it is best to stay away from it because the way the money has been acquired is known, and it can only be received by humiliation, asking, and refraining from criticism. Humiliation, dhul, asking su'al, and refraining from criticism, sukut ala inkar. So basically what he's saying is that the only way that a person gets money from a ruler now is by humbling themselves and humiliating themselves in front of that ruler and asking for it from them and not criticizing them. And if this is the way that you get the money, then it's unacceptable. That's what he's saying. Especially, usually, like a lot of times, they're speaking kind of more directly to people of knowledge. Especially for people of knowledge and stuff, it's unacceptable for a person to do that to themselves. Mm-hmm. These things are important to know. One of the things we said before is that there's subtleties here. It's important for the community to understand. Okay. Related. Okay? It's related. So then you can understand like how do you deal with something. I hope this is understandable and that people don't misunderstand it, but we'll try. Okay. So it's not uncommon for people to come up to me sometimes and say, "Oh, you're here?" It's like, "Yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm here." You know? And then they say, "Well, how come you don't give more khutbahs?" And there's not really any way for me to answer that question. Right? Like, there's no actual appropriate way for me to answer that question. Or if you take me out of it, take any person of knowledge. You know, go to the person of knowledge, tell them, how come you don't do this more? Or how come, it could be, if it's something that they control, you could ask them that, right? But if it's not something they control, you can't really ask them that. They're not going to have anything that they can say. And they're not supposed to be thinking about it too much anyways. Right? Like, they're invited, they're not invited, it's not, and you don't ask, you know, like that's like the biggest idea. You know, someone says like, okay, you know, I'm here. You don't like go to a masjid and tell them, can I give khutbah? This is like completely against protocol. Yeah. Many people don't understand this protocol anymore. Social media has thrown all of this protocol into the madness of the trash can. Like it's completely insane. Because basically what people do online is the equivalent of going to the masjid asking to give khutbah. Make yourself into a personality, draw it up in a certain way, you know, caricature the whole thing, and then get up in a position so then people invite you to give the khutbah. You know, it's the whole thing is But my point is that there's a way to deal with this. Yeah, is it a little bit harder? It's not as like it's not as spelled out on certain things. Yeah, it's not as spelled out on certain things, but it's just the way that it is. One of the predecessors refused to take it on the basis that others who also deserved it had not taken it, but this is not right at all. Had he taken it, he would have only taken what was rightfully his, in spite of the fact that the rest would have remained in their possession of those who were wronged. That money was not the common property of them all. This paragraph seems kind of strange. It seems like there's more to it, but as if it kind of like fell in the wrong place. Yeah, I don't understand the paragraph. Sorry, this will happen from time to time. I don't understand. I'd have to do more research. Okay, section 3. Exposition on the state of those who socialize with tyrannical rulers. Oh man. Let's see how long this section is. It's pretty short. It leads us to chapter 5 on the ethics and companionship of brotherhood, which is a really nice chapter. So let's see what we can do here. Know that your state with tyrannical rulers and officials is one of 3. First, you've got your chart again. Those who are taking notes can make your chart. Nobody will blame you. We won't consider you to be unintelligent and write you off. People used to do funny things, by the way. You think it's I was reading this story about Abu Bakr al-Shibli. Abu Bakr al-Shibli was a really righteous person. Okay, he went to his teacher, or someone that he wanted to be his teacher. He told him, "Ya walidi, oh my son, pay attention to your thoughts, and if anything other than Allah comes to your thoughts between this Jummah and the next Jummah, then don't come back to me because you're not qualified to be a student." This is very, very severe. Very severe. So some of them might think, like, if you take notes and you make a chart, you don't deserve to be a student. We're not going to say that. Make a chart, it's very nice. Make a nice chart, put colors on it. It'll help you. There's nothing wrong with that. First possibility, that you visit them, and this is the worst state, for it has been narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Whoever goes to the gates of the rulers will be tried. A servant never gets close to the ruler, but he also gets further from Allah." Hudayfa, radiallahu anhu, great companion of the Prophet ﷺ, said, "Beware of the places of tribulation." He was asked, "And what are they?" Hudayfa replied, "The doors of the rulers. One of you may visit the ruler and find yourself verifying his untruths and saying things about him that are not true." Yeah. So, it's going to sound strange, but a good place to see this concept is in the Ip Man movies. Okay? Ip Man, IP Man. You can watch them yourself and see what I mean. Some of the rulers asked one of the ascetics, "Why not come to us?" So he replied, "I fear that should you bring me close, you would tempt me, and should you keep me away, you would deprive me. But your hand possesses nothing that I want, and there is nothing in my hand that I fear losing. Those who have come to you have only come so that they would not need others because of you. And I do not need you because of him who has made in no need, who has made in no need of me." Who has made in no need of me. Yes, okay. You get it? It's a powerful statement. I'll read it again. Okay. So the ruler was asked one of the righteous people, "Why don't you come to us?" He replied, "I fear that should you bring me close, you would tempt me, and should you keep me away, you would deprive me." So you have this righteous person, the ruler is saying, "How come you don't come to us?" He's saying, "Well, if I have a relationship with you, then if I'm far, it will be bad. And if I'm good, if I'm close, it will also be bad. But your hand possesses nothing that I want, and there is nothing in my hand that I fear losing. You don't have anything that I want, and I don't fear losing whatever I have. Those who have come to you have only come so that they would not need others because of you." Right? The people who have come to you, they came to you because they think that you, the ruler, will make it so that they won't need anyone else. They'll be taken care of by you, they won't need anyone else. And I do not need you because of him, capital H, who has made in no need of me. As it's translated, we'll just go with as it's translated. Meaning, I don't need you because of the one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who made everything without any need for me. He subhanahu wa ta'ala is in charge of everything. It is clear from these reports that accompanying the rulers is abhorrent. Furthermore, those who visit the rulers are subject to disobeying Allah Almighty and Sublime, either through his actions, speech, or silence. It's very messy. As for actions, it is due to the fact that visiting the ruler usually entails stepping on stolen property. Just visiting them. You're going to visit them, you're going to walk on their floor. Their floor was probably stolen from someone. It means you're walking on someone's stolen property. Should we assume that the property would not be stolen, what will be under him, or the tent, or whatever else that shades him, is usually earned by his unlawful money, and using that is impermissible. So either you walked on something impermissible, or everything that's around you, anything that you use, it's all impermissible. If we would assume those things would not be unlawful either, he is still at risk of committing other sins, like prostrating to him, standing in his presence, serving him, or humbling himself to him, because of the rulership that he uses to oppress the people. Okay, so maybe they don't prostrate to him, fine. Just standing in the presence of the ruler is sinful for some people. As you know, like, it's very hard to be a high-level scholar. Like righteous scholar, it's very hard. These things are very subtle. So standing in his presence, serving him, or humbling himself to him because of the rulership that he uses to oppress the people. Now, what do? You show respect to this person, because how do you deal with a person of that caliber without showing some level of deference or respect to them? You have to. It's like part of the interaction, right? But if you did that, it's a problem. It's very, very difficult position to be in. SubhanAllah. This is why Imam Malik, remember, there's all these stories about Imam Malik, and people hear them, they think like, what is this extremism or something? This is why Imam Malik would go into gatherings with the rulers and refuse to sit anywhere other than the head of the gathering. If someone's sitting in the head, they have to get up and move. Malik has to sit there, because he's the inheritor of the way of the Prophet ﷺ. Malik, who would not wear his shoes in Medina. Malik walked barefoot in Medina. Right? He said, how can I walk somewhere in Medina with my sandals on? And the Prophet ﷺ walked in that place. And I'm going to put my sandals on. This is Malik. Malik wouldn't narrate hadith without washing up and burning bukhur and putting itar on and all of these things. Then he narrate to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So if he's in the gathering, he has to be the head of the gathering. If the ruler tells him, I want you to come to the capital and teach my children, Malik says, no. You want me to teach your children? You send me your children. And ilmu yu'ta wa la ya'ti. Ilm is gone to, it doesn't come. So Malik said, that's it. And he'll die on this principle. Radiallahu anhu. So these people were very, really something. Inshallah, this is a good reminder. At some point, we need to, when we eventually finish this book, inshallah, another 40 sessions, then we have to go to, we need to do biographies. Learn a lot in the biographies of the righteous people. A lot. Humbling oneself for an oppressor is a sin. In fact, if one humbles himself for a wealthy person because of his wealth and for no other reason, that necessitates humility. A third of his religion, for no other reason that necessitates humility, a third of his religion is wasted. With this in mind, how grave would it be to humble oneself to an oppressor? Now you understand my problem with the whole fundraising system that we have. Remember, we've said it, I've said this over and over again. This fundraising system that we have is a problem. It's not to say anything about the sheikhs. The sheikhs are doing, they're working in a system, they're working in it. They're, say it's their fault, say it's not their fault, whatever. But, a system where the spiritual and religious leader of the community is required to fundraise the money for that community is that, of course, obviously, a portion of which is paying their salary. There's humiliation in it. And if nothing else, we should say, like, they'll do it out of their humility, out of their commitment to the cause, out of their humility, out of their selflessness, they'll do it. But we as a people shouldn't want that. Shouldn't make us happy. Deep down inside, I think some people it makes them happy. It's a sickness, it's a horrible sickness, but deep down inside, actually, I know some people it makes them happy. Makes them happy to see the sheikh get up and ask them for their money. So he says, humbling oneself for an oppressor is a sin. In fact, if one humbles himself for a wealthy person because of his wealth, and for no other reason, that necessitates humility. A third of his religion is wasted. Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif. Sallimna ya Rab. Sallimna ya Rab. Kissing his hand is sinful as well unless one fears him. This is not the case with a just caliph or a scholar who deserves that. As for others, one is only permitted to greet them. So, maybe a sidebar is needed here because in American Islam, this is like people lose their mind. But like kissing the hands of people of knowledge, in particular, elderly people, people of taqwa, stuff like this, it's pretty widely practiced thing in many Muslim lands. I'm not saying you have to do it. When you come from an American context, you're really like, it's very difficult. To the extent that I can remember the first hand that I kissed, subhanAllah, because it was like, I couldn't bring myself to do it, can't, even my parents, it's hard for me to do it. It's not part of our culture, and so sometimes it's like, but I've forced myself to do it before, and I've seen the way they respond to it, even though it's different for them. It's not part of their culture. But old people, yeah. Elders, you do it, of course. Elderly person, you have to. Yeah. So and then usually there's some each place has their own protocol. Like you try to kiss their hand and they grab your head and they kiss your head, or like there's different ways the different places do their own thing, right? But I've seen like the way if I force myself and force my parents and I do it to them, I see their response. They like it. It might be weird to them, but they like it, For righteous people and scholars and stuff, actually, if they're a truly righteous person, they don't actually care, or they dislike it. But they'll let you do it. Oftentimes, they'll let you do it out of like knowing why you do it, right? Like, why are you doing it? You're not doing it because of the person. You're doing it out of respect to what that person represents. They represent something in particular. It's elderly or similar, right? They represent something. So you kiss their hand out of respect for them. But anyways, this is why he's talking about this. The first hand that I kissed, to not leave you in suspense, was Sheikh Ahmed Taha Rayan. Allah yarham. Allah have mercy on him. If you speak Arabic, actually, even if you don't speak Arabic, I do this all the time. You just look up his videos on YouTube. Sheikh Ahmed Taha Rayan. And look up his videos and just put his video on the screen, put it on mute. I put his videos up, I don't even listen to what's being said. I just put his video up so I can see his face. He was a very beautiful person. And he was very elderly also. So like it helped that he was known for his taqwa, and he was one of the senior scholars in the world. Literally, like he's an advisor to MJ, the American Muslim Jurist Association. He's one of their advisors. He taught comparative fiqh in like basically every major university. He taught in Azhar. He was given I can't remember if it was Sheikh al-Azhar or the Mufti I think it was the Mufti of Egypt. They offered him the position of Mufti of Egypt multiple times. He refused every time. He just didn't want to have anything to do with it. You know, he was a very, very special person, very humble person. He lived in this neighborhood in Cairo that if we told the Egyptians that we were going there, they'd get scared and shocked. They're like, how are you going to that neighborhood? We don't go to that neighborhood, especially richer Egyptians. Like, we don't go to that neighborhood. We're like, Sheikh Rayyan's in the neighborhood. What do you mean? Like, it's a rich neighborhood. And Sheikh Rayyan is there. You have to walk past like garbage piles and stuff. You get to his he had like a building, and then in the bottom floor of the building, he had a little musalla. It's probably like from the chairs to here, wall to wall, was the musalla. Was in the bottom of the building. He would teach there sometimes, and all the neighborhood people knew him because of that. He was a very beautiful person. So of course his hand, people would try to kiss his hand when they see him. Students would see him and they'd try to kiss his hand and stuff. I remember doing that. But he had a nice trick too that he would do, which is that he's like Saidi, Saidi Egyptians, like the southern Egyptians, very strong people, farming people. So his hand was like, Bismillah, mashallah, like a bear paw, huge, thick hand. It's the kind of hand that you don't control the hand; it controls you. So what he would do when he didn't want people kissing his hand, he would shake the hand like this. So he would catch your hand from underneath. If he catches your hand from underneath, your hand is not coming. His hand is not going on top. It's staying underneath. So you catch your hand like this, and you know you're not kissing his hand that day. You have to get him the next time. So, anyways, Allah have mercy on him. بذكرهم تنزل الرحمة. Sufyan ibn Uyayna radiallahu anhu, he said, and the dhikr salihin tanzil al-rahmah. That when you mention righteous people, the mercy descends. Just mention their name, mercy descends. Sufyan ibn Uyayna was a mujtahid imam. He was from the category of mujtahid imams. So he's not saying that out of not knowing. As for speech, he said speech can also be sinful. It is due to the fact that he might supplicate for the oppressor, praise him, or approve of his false words, either directly by nodding his head or by a cheerful face. It's very hard, You have to be really stoic. So you'll find some mashayikh, like senior mashayikh, you find them extremely stoic. Some people don't understand it. They're not stoic because they're not feeling anything. They're very steady because they're very hesitant as to what they are tacitly approving of. Right? You don't want anyone to take an impression from it that's not what it is. So they won't just be smiling all the time or these things. Usually it's neutral. Only if it's really something that can be acceptable, then they break from the neutrality. Because either directly by nodding his head, or indirectly nodding the head, cheerful face, he might also express love and loyalty to him, manifest a yearning to meet him, and wish a long life for him. This is because in most cases the guest does not merely greet the ruler, but speaks as well. His words will not go past the aforementioned categories. A report states, if someone supplicates for the long life of an oppressor, he wants Allah to be disobeyed. In the footnote, it says that it's not found to be from the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, but mentioned to be a statement from Al-Hasan radiallahu anhu. But in any case, you don't know which Al-Hasan this is. It's Al-Hasan ibn Ali or Al-Hasan al-Basri. Without any other indication, you can't tell. But either way, point is, if the person's an oppressor, you make dua for them to have a long life. Then what are you making dua for? You're making dua for oppression, for Allah to be disobeyed, right? So this is what he's saying. Some of these things maybe don't make sense to us because unless you're thinking in translation, you don't think about it. It's not a common greeting in English for someone to greet another person of prominence, and make dua for them to have a long life. Right? But in Arabic, it's very common dua that if you see someone and a sign of showing that you esteem them is to make dua that they have a long life. It's part of how you would greet them, you know. Like you do this with scholars and people of knowledge all the time. Tell them like with teachers, you tell them they give you a long life in taqwa and obedience and ta'ah and these kind of things because you want them to have a long life. So they would. This is like when you're dealing with the ruler, you would deal with them in that way. Let me try to get to the end of this section. He is not allowed to supplicate for him except by saying something like, "May Allah rectify you," or "May Allah direct you towards what is good." Basically, you have to make dua that Allah fixes the person. Fix your life. That's what my 8th grade students are. They know this is the motto now. I tell them all the time, fix your life. It's a colloquial translation of Aslah Allahu halik. As for silence, it is due to the fact that he might go to the gathering and see things like furniture of silk, vessels of silver, and boys with forbidden clothes of silk and remain silent. These are things we're not going to get into the commentary on them. There are all kinds of things that used to happen. Anyone who sees these things and does not say anything is actually taking part in the sin. Similarly, he might hear them say vile things and lie, slander, and harm others with their tongues. Staying silent about that is impermissible because commanding what is right and rebuking what is wrong is obligatory upon him. All of these things are a problem now. A person can't be in that kind of situation. Allah help us. Just as a side note, you know, everything is easy when you don't matter. Just to limit our judgment on other people. Everything is easy when you don't matter. It's much harder when you actually matter. You understand what I'm saying? So like for me to sit here and talk about, you know, how you interact with the ruler and all of these kind of things, it's very easy for me to say that because I don't matter. Like there's no governor or ruler of a country who's sitting around and thinking like, oh no, if Jamal Diwan says something about our rule, we're in trouble. Nobody's thinking that. But there are people in countries today, their situation is very difficult because the rulers know if this person says something, I'm in trouble. That's a lot of pressure. So, and it's not usually just pressure on the person themselves, it's pressure on their family. So we can look at it and be like, well, how come they don't speak up against this ruler and that ruler and stuff? Well, maybe they didn't want their daughter to get imprisoned. And Allahu A'lam what happens in these prisons and then killed. Maybe they didn't want their wife killed, and maybe they didn't want their parents killed and their uncles killed, and maybe they didn't want this and that. Like it's easy to comment on when you don't matter. That's all I'm saying. I'm not justifying anything in particular or not justifying anything in particular. I'm just saying that we should remember that. If you now say that his silence is excusable because he fears for himself, we say, let's see what he says. We say that you are right, but the fact remains that he has no need to subject himself to the unlawful without an excuse. If he does not visit him and witness these things, he is not obliged to command and rebuke anything. If one knows the corruption of a place and knows his inability to change it by attending, he is not allowed to enter. So this is his response. Section 4 is on going to tyrannical rulers due to an excuse. So we'll see what he has to say about that next time. Inshallah. Any questions or comments? Yes. Wow. How does, yeah. Wow. I mean, in short, I don't have an answer to that question. It's a very hard question. How does the idea of giving obedience to a ruler, as long as they're not asking you to disobey Allah and like not rebelling against rulers, and this chapter, and Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, I don't have any good answers to this question. This is a very difficult question. Question of rebellion in Islamic law, and like how to deal with rulers and stuff. This chapter, they would look at it like, basically you just don't deal with them, but you don't rebel against them. And but that question itself is a very hard question. And a lot of times the answers that are given to it are very kind of like overly simplistic, in my opinion. But you know, I don't necessarily encourage people to read the works of Khalid Abul Fadl. But I will say this, is that he wrote his PhD on rebellion and Islamic law, and he researched it for 10 years in writing that PhD. Just to give like a little bit of context to how difficult these questions are. And sometimes they're brushed over very quickly, you know, like the fact of the matter is Abu Hanifa supported 2 rebellions. First against the Umayyads, second against the Abbasids. So historically that happened. Like he even like paid for weapons, like, you know, he did all kinds of things. Imam Zayd, of course, from the Ahlul Bayt, from the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, he led some of those. And he's an Imam from the Imams of the religion. So, you know, the situation might not be as simple as it's played out to be sometimes. And a lot of these conversations came up around the Arab Spring. There was a book that was written on this by Sheikh Salman Auda, but I never got a hold of it. And I really wanted to see what he said because I kind of trust him more than a lot of people on this. Not only because he's been unjustly in prison for many years now in Saudi, but for other reasons too. He's just a good scholar. But anyways, that's much like I said. Any other, yes.